Welcome everybody to this amazing special event today. This is a joint event that the Michigan Institute for Data Science is organizing jointly with the Center for Education of Women Plus and the Institute for Research on Women and Gender. I'm GEDI, the director of the Michigan Institute for Data Science. And I just want to take a minute to tell you who we are, what we do. Our mission statement's up there. We try to advance data science and AI and its impact across the entire university. And that really means all disciplines and all aspects, and that includes the humanities, and that includes things like the impact on gender issues and things like that we're going to be talking about today. So specifically, our very first pillar is responsible data science and AI, where responsibility includes many of the kinds of things that we were talking about. We've had lots of previous events in this series that we call Data and AI in Society. I'm sure we'll have lots more. This is kind of an ad hoc series, so it's not a specific, it's a scheduled thing. It's when we have an opportunity, and we have, as we have today with our visiting expert from Jordan. We also have on a regular, more or less monthly scheduled mini symposia on specific topics. So our next one is on October 20th, which is on AI-driven research workflows, and this is something that we are organizing jointly with robotics, with the Department of Robotics. And then on December 6th and 7th, we have a mini symposium on rewriting the conventional societal narratives with data and AI. And this is, again, jointly with the Institute for Research on Women and Gender, but also the Digital Studies Institutes and Women of Color Code. And I suspect that if the kind of discussion we're going to have this afternoon is of interest to you, this mini symposium might be of interest to you as well. So check it out. It's off our website, midasumich.edu. November 13th and 14th is our big annual summit, which has a lot of cool stuff. And then we have a whole bunch of tutorials on generative AI, which don't require any significant technical background. So this is meant for everybody to kind of get into this topic. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Jing Liu, the Executive Director of MIDAS and the moderator of today's panel, to introduce our distinguished panelists and get us started. Thank you.
Yeah, so again, thank you everyone for joining this event today. So as you're aware, this year, AI really has become a household word. If among researchers, AI has been playing a role in various ways, this year really with things like ChatGPT, generative AI, and I think a lot of people are starting to realize this is such a revolutionary force, but on the other hand, a very uncertain force, because it's really hard to predict whether we're able to use AI in ways that align with our values as a society. And so this is really a very critical time. So I'm really happy that you guys are here today to discuss with the panelists about a really sort of an interesting issue about how AI is differentially impacting people in different, not just in demographic groups, but also in different under the different cultural contexts. So the two panelists today, I will ask them to talk about their work more, but Marina Alsahawneh is a scholar from Jordan. She's visiting UFM for a month, and she's a technologist of Jordan Open Source, which is a nonprofit organization really for equal access, openness, and democratization of emerging technologies. And Merve Hickok is a colleague of ours at the Michigan Institute for Data Science, our responsible data and AI advisor, but her role in responsible AI really is far-reaching. She's the president of the Center for AI and Digital Policy, and also the founder of AIethicist.org, and she's really a global leader in the area of AI regulation. So with that, I want to ask them a few questions to start things off, and then ask audience to ask questions. Even for the questions that I ask them, feel free to chime in with your comments, thoughts, and additional questions. Just raise your hands, and I or our staff members will hand the mic to you. So first, I want to ask the two of you to introduce yourselves and talk about a topic of your work that you're most passionate about, and how you got yourselves focused on AI's impact on women. Marina, would you like to start?
It is on, yes. Well, hello everyone. I'll start from the last part of the question because it's very interesting and a million-dollar question of how I got interested in AI's impact on women. In fact, for me, the question should be, how did I get interested in technology in the first place? Because I did geology for bachelor's. Yeah. But the thing is, I come from kind of marginalized town in North Jordan, and in 2000, I was 5 years old, and my parents decided they want to get a computer. So it was too expensive that my siblings and I were not allowed to use it. So I started using it secretly every now and again, and sometimes borrow some pirated CDs of Super Mario from kids in the neighborhood to play my favorite game. But then after that, I started having more interest in knowing what are computers in the first place? How do they work? And so I started being interested in a lot of things that are related to technology. Now, I'll skip to season 2, where I ended up being a self-taught front-end developer with a great passion to contributing to open source websites in Jordan, especially that technology in the first place is usually designed to support left to right languages, and so I found it sometimes difficult to navigate some websites that showed texts in Arabic, because they in Arabic we write right to left, and so these websites were not right to left friendly, and they would show even if they did support some Arabic characters, the whole page would be a mess, and it's not user friendly at all. So I started contributing to all these websites, sometimes just adding a very simple contribution that fixes this problem, such as adding an the HTML direction attribute and assigning a value to it that says RTL, right to left. But after that, I have got connected with a great organization in Jordan called the Jordan Open Source Association that works on defending the digital rights of people in Jordan, as well as promoting the open source culture. And that was a very nice environment for me to thrive, to learn more, to find mentors as I continued with my web development journey. But the thing is, as I progressed with that and with my passion to contribute to open source software, I would usually find myself the only woman I know who contribute to such communities in Jordan. And sometimes when we have like gatherings and dinners for OSS developers, I always find myself to be the only woman between 30 men. So I started having more questions about gender and how our genders are built, how our interests are shaped, why women do not contribute, why women in Jordan do not contribute to open source software in Jordan. And so I decided to do a master's degree in gender studies, and indeed I did so, and I did study in my thesis women's contribution to open source communities in Jordan, why they are reluctant to contribute to such communities, and what it would take for them to be active contributors to them. But then after that, once you start working on one intersection of gender and technology, you start becoming interested in some other tech-related gender issues. So I started becoming focused as well on cyber gender-based violence and the gender bias in AI, and how does AI affect the lives of women in the world and in my region in specific.
Merve, Hickok, I'm glad to meet all of you today, and thank you for making the time. So I used to be in the corporate world. I was in charge of the recruitment technologies for Bank of America Merrill Lynch for all regions outside of US, or Canada, Latin America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. And this was back in 2011, just as some of these recruitment technologies were starting to embed AI technologies or algorithmic technologies, not AI as we see as advanced today. But I was also in charge of diversity recruitment, so I had a dual hat within the bank. And as I was going to different campuses, talking to different groups, student groups, and some of the feedback that I started getting was, great that you're using these technologies, but it is actually putting some obstacles in front of us and accessing these technologies. Here you are trying to, attract us to investment banking, trading, and different, jobs in this field. But then when we're trying to apply or go through the process, we come across some issues because everything is online. We don't have broadband access. We don't have a quiet space to do the video interviews. We don't have, when we speak on the video, like algorithmic video interviewing, it doesn't recognize our accent and such. So it got me thinking, like, why we were putting these in place, and was it actually helping our cause? Because we were trying to diversify and get more minorities, more women into a very male-oriented industry. So I started talking with my colleagues, started talking within the organization. We did a lot of changes, so that was great to see, but it got me interested more on AI bias. So I went down a rabbit hole of research. 2 years later, when I came out of the other end of the rabbit hole, this was 2015 at that point, I decided to quit corporate world and found aiethicist.org and kind of start talking about, after 2 years of reading, listening, comparing my experiences, start talking about AI bias, impact on communities, impact on women, and social justice at large. And then 3.5 years ago, one of my current colleagues reached out to me to find this organization, Center for AI and Digital Policy, which is focused on AI policy and regulation work, and how to promote these policies that protects human rights, democratic values, and rule of law. So how do we regulate this technology to promote those values rather than profit? I believe in this technology. I'm a techno-optimist. I'm a very curious person, but want to make sure that it works for everyone, not just the same group of people again and again and again. And in those 3 years, got approached by School of Information here to teach data science ethics. So I've been teaching here as well, and also thanks to Jag and Jing for our collaboration and my current work for MIDAS as well for responsible AI.
I thought I heard, and I'm not sure. Marina, did you say that there is, or was, violence in AI? Did you use the word violence?
Cyber gender-based violence. It usually refers to some people call it ICT or IT or technology facilitated violence. It is when people use technology as a tool or as a medium to direct violence and to do what is the right word to?
Is it to
Harassment?
intimidate people from coming into the field?
No, it's in general. It targets. It's when technology is being used to target women in general, ordinary women, sometimes women activists, to silence them, and it is a very common phenomenon in the Middle East, where where women activists are just being get targeted online.
Harassment.
Such as harassment is one form of cyber gender-based violence.
Misinformation as well? Misinformation about that person, and so the rest of the community might not trust them?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So, so first of all, I want to ask you, the two of you, to give the audience members a little bit of a background as the context of the rest of the questions, which is, Marina, could you tell us a little bit about how AI is, how widely AI is being deployed in Jordan and in the Middle East, how it's being perceived by the public, and how AI regulation is going. And then I'm going to ask Merve to maybe provide some thoughts in comparison to the situation in the US.
Well, how AI is perceived, I think like any part of the world, when all these technologies suddenly go ubiquitous, people start having what a digital sociologist called Steve Wolger calls cyberbole. He derived that term from the English word hyperbole, and he used it to refer to the exaggerated claims and beliefs that people might have about technology and what it might achieve. So when these technologies go viral, everyone starts thinking that at some point everyone will just become an IP address. These technologies will reduce every individual to no more than an IP address, and some of them will start to argue that it will at some point eliminate all the biases and all the discrimination and all the human rights violations that we have, because people will no longer have this affiliation to a certain group or religion or gender, and so they started to argue that everyone will just be an IP address, But then after that, I think there have with some campaigns from digital rights organizations and so on. There has been a growing awareness among people on such issues, and I think people have recently started to realize that AI has a lot of bias against them and against against other people based on their affiliation to a certain group. How widely is AI being deployed in the Middle East and in Jordan? It is actually being widely deployed, and there are some strategies in most countries in the Middle East to start using AI more often in several institutions and hospitals and universities and schools. So it is being widely used, and even by individuals. Regarding regulations, actually in the Middle East, we still do not have any regulations that that is related to AI, but we have some countries in the Middle East, especially Jordan, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, who started developing some frameworks, charters, and some frameworks and charters that try to highlight all those principles and ethics that AI should have, such as transparency, accountability, respect for individual privacy, and all that stuff. But none of these things is, let's say, legally binding. It's just a voluntary thing, but it is considered to be a first step towards regulating it. However, for other countries in the Middle East, some people argue, and even some governments argue, that, for instance, regulating AI will kill innovation in that field, that it will drive away investors and investing opportunities in these countries, and that, for another example, that regulating AI will make things worse, because politicians and regulators in the region do not understand how technology works and how AI works, and by trying to regulate them this fast, they will just make things worse. So far, just we have some charters and frameworks regarding the ethics of AI, but we do not have regulations.
Merve, do you want to comment about the situation in the US and maybe EU in contrast?
No, absolutely. And I'll also tackle the first part of your question. So, as you mentioned, AI is pretty ubiquitous in many of our day-to-day life. So if you're wearing, for example, a fitness tracker or an Apple Watch, or even have your smartphone by your bedside, you start interacting with AI systems already. And throughout the day, a lot of algorithms that drive the many apps that we use, which kind of news that you should see, which kind of social media posts that you should see, what should be amplified. If you're applying for a credit or a loan or a mortgage evaluation, it's the algorithmic systems that make those determinations whether you should be eligible, to what credit level you should be eligible, or at what interest percentage that you should get those. If you're applying for jobs or even school admission at this point, you are subject to algorithmic systems. Many hospitals already in the US are using for health prioritization and wellness recommendations. And the list goes on. A lot of because my organization is like a human rights defender, a lot of our focus is also on law enforcement and border management, how AI and algorithmic systems are used in that spaces where it has a direct impact on fundamental rights and rule of law. So at this point, I would say probably there is no industry that is not untouched by AI, deployment of AI systems already. In terms of regulation, I didn't rightly mention EU because a lot of my work up until the beginning of this year was with EU AI Act, how EU is regulating AI and what kind of guardrails and protections that they're putting in place. So that work still continues. Hopefully EU AI Act will be finalized by the end of the year, and then will go into effect in a couple of years after that. What EU is trying to do is provide this horizontal regulation, and by horizontal I mean it applies to all sectors. So think of this as like a foundational regulation, which tries to create some market harmonization across EU member states, so a single market, then product safety, but also provide some protections, fundamental rights protections for EU citizens. Because any company who's looking to sell an AI product in EU will be subject to this regulation and some of the obligations. What happened in the US, we've been asking the same thing, guardrails and protections in US to US lawmakers for several years now. But with the launch of ChatGPT and GPT-4 at the beginning of the year is when we really started getting a lot of attention and attraction. So there's a lot of interest in how to regulate this technology in the US. And if you look at US's history of technology regulation, it doesn't have the best of records. It's more corporate friendly. But we are at this point, there is a bipartisan agreement on technology. This use of this technology in certain high-stake environments should be regulated. So it's not a matter of if anymore, but it's a matter of how. So we're seeing different conversations on the legislative piece, but also the urgency of regulation here in the US as well.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I think, Jordan, how you started off, it sounded as if people get caught up in the trap of techno-solutionism, as if AI is going to solve every problem, when that's not the case. I've also heard of people get caught up in this idea that we can get to a point where AI is completely unbiased, which I think you also touched on. In what ways can we address context, nuance, especially from a gender-based perspective? So, for example, I worked at a high school this past year, and we found that though boys had like less, say, violent or just offensives in general, and this is a black high school in Detroit. So though their offenses were considered minor, they were given more severe punishments than the girls, even though the girls might be really fighting. And so this was based on the bias of, say, the principal and the dean of culture, who are kind of over this. And so I think of the context by which we had an administrative meeting, and we were considering using AI and whomever to detect knives, and whether there were arms on the students using all the cameras in the school. And I can already imagine how that could escalate very quickly in any situation in a school, especially if you get the police involved immediately just off the thought, or some AI system that detects that there might be a weapon. So I guess, long story short, how can we get to a point where we kind of acknowledge that things won't be completely unbiased, but use context or nuance to apply in all these different dynamic and complex environments, given our history and our current situation?
Now, my question is, do you want to hear the answer now or wait? Because we have we have planned to discuss all these examples and all these let's say different contexts of AI in different countries and different regions, in different scenarios, and so we will share plenty of examples on that. But thank you for that question.
All right, so actually let's move right on about AI bias. And thanks for helping us set up the stage. Just to, again, give the audience members an overview, I want to ask Merve to first talk a little bit about biases in AI algorithms. This is a topic we can sit here and talk for a few days. So very briefly, how biases happen in the algorithms and some examples of consequences, and what are some of the works your organization is doing already. And then I'm gonna ask you to talk more about the gender-specific biases.
Absolutely, and I'll just go to the fundamentals of how algorithms are developed, designed and developed in the first place. So a group of people decide that AI could be used in the context of a problem. Like to your question, should we be using AI to detect weapons in a school context? That can be a very different context. Should we be using AI to recruit someone, or prioritize patients in a hospital setting, etc. So, first of all, that group makes some decisions about what the relevant question is, what kind of questions we should solve with AI, and then they make decisions about what kind of data is relevant for this question, and then they go about collecting that data or sourcing that data and processing that data to make it ready to be able to use it in the training of an AI system. But all of those decisions up until that point already contain certain biases, right? So the way that you prioritize one question, one problem over another, what kind of data that you choose to use, what is the quality of that data, who does that data represent, what kind of groups, what kind of values and priorities that data represents. And is it equal? Is it equitable? Is it representative? Or is it representing one group over another, which has, when you build an algorithmic system on top of it, that those majority views or minority majority imbalance within the data has direct impact on the outcomes. AI doesn't have any independent moral values. It doesn't have an independent judgment of the data. It is reflecting the design and data decisions that developers make and kind of amplifying those patterns in the data itself. So you can imagine some of the cultural values, biases, stereotypes that are already in the minds of, and political prioritization as well, that are already in the minds of the developers or whoever is in the decision-making process already embedded in those decisions. And then you have a whole host of sources of bias that can impact the data quality as well, depending on how you collect that data, what kind of methods you use to collect that data, what does it represent, etc. And then with AI is basically, think of it as a statistical analytical modeling that you provide the data and it detects patterns, it detects, categorizes it. So it looks at historical pattern, builds a model, and then when you provide new data that it has not seen, it uses that model to make predictions. So it's always past looking. It's always built on past data and past trends. So it doesn't necessarily give much space for development, for aspirations, for change, right? So there's that element of bias and restrictions as well. And my organization, whether it's MIDAS, School of Information, CAIDP, I'm also on the advisory board of Women in AI Ethics, is kind of trying to break these biases and impact on human rights as well.
Yeah, so I just want to add an example about AI looking to the past. So for example, a large company is trying to, let's say a large company is trying to use its previous data, okay, to identify employees who are most suitable for promotion. Okay, they might look at past 20 years of hiring history and promotion history and say, look, white men have been promoted more often than other people, so that means they have been more successful. And let's promote more white men in the future. So that's exactly the kind of bias that comes from previous bias and get carried over to future if you're not careful about this. Now I want to turn to Marina to talk about, in your mind, what are some of the sort of the biases that AI algorithm cause that are particularly harmful to women?
When it comes to AI, to gender bias in AI, let's say the main principle or the main way things work are not different from all the examples that Dr. Jing and Merve shared. AI tends to it does not have this this ability or this what we have what was the word that you used?
Independent judgment, moral values.
Yeah, the all that judgment thing that we do, AI does not have all that ability, but what it does is it learns from all the previous data, and what distinguishes AI, what makes AI very AI and what sets it apart from other software is in fact its ability to learn. So it continues to learn. Think of that when you start when you create a new account on YouTube, let's say, then it has very random videos that have nothing to do with your taste, but then with your taste of music, of videos, of movies, and then after you start using it day after day and week after week, it starts learning more about you, about what you like and what you don't, and then it starts generating it discovers all the patterns of what you love to watch and to listen to, and it starts suggesting more and more of that content. Now the same applies when for some gender issues that we already have in our offline world. Women historically got discriminated against when it comes to hiring. So let's say if we have a woman applying to a job in finance, and her resume said that she studied at something college for women. Now, because she was discriminated against in our offline world, what happens is that when we inject all that data to AI hiring systems, is that they start studying the patterns of what a successful candidate might look like. What are some of the keywords that they have on their resume, and so by default AI starts realizing that okay, this has next to the institution, to the educational institution, it has the keyword for women, but then it eliminates that resume and marks it as someone who is not a successful candidate for that job. There are plenty more plenty of examples of how AI can be biased against women. One of the examples that I usually love to share is a symptom checker that used to give different diagnoses to men and women based on their gender. So if we go to that symptom checker and put let's say male, then the symptoms, let's say left arm numbness, chest pain, and shortness of breath, it would suggest that this man should immediately seek the help should immediately seek medical attention. On the other hand, if we enter the same symptoms and we only changed one input field in that symptom checker, we put female instead of male, then it would suggest that she is more likely having depression or panic attack, and it is a good idea if she could visit her doctor during the upcoming days or weeks. Now the thing is, when they investigated the medical data that this symptom checker was trained on, they found out that the data dates back to a period of time when heart disease was considered to be a male-only disease, and that data has only 5% of it where cases of women with such diagnoses were taken into account. Some more biases that can be conducted by AI against women is stereotyping in general. I did a workshop a couple of days ago at the CEW Plus Advocacy Symposium on gender bias in AI, and for that workshop I did a few prompts, or I asked Mid-Journey to imagine a few images for me, to try to imagine a few things for me. So I asked Mid-Journey to imagine a doctor, and in Mid-Journey tries to imagine four images initially, but then all the 4 images were a man. I asked Mid-Journey to imagine an economist, and he would imagine in the 4 pictures he would imagine a man sitting on piles of money. When I asked it to imagine an economist, and I asked it to imagine a university professor, and it was the same result. But you can imagine, you can tell what was the result when I asked it to imagine a nurse or a social worker, or So it because it has been trained on data that is full of stereotypes, of gender stereotyping. It tends to amplify all that and regenerate all that bias against women. So I have a few more examples, but I will keep them for the sections where we will focus more on Middle East.
Actually, let me ask a question that one of the audience members provided in the registration form. So I think this is actually a very, very good question. How do biases held by Westerners as AI developers or as data subjects affect the lives of women in the Middle East through AI technology?
Good job.
Whichever one you want to start.
I think not only what Marina mentioned about the stereotypes and biases in the minds and cultural experiences, developmental experiences of the developers and data scientists is embedded in this technology, is embedded in the design already, right? So how you see, like for example, if we're talking specifically for Middle East, we might all have different ideas of what Middle East looks like, what life in Middle East looks like, and what are some of the personal social interactions, political interactions in Middle East look like, right? So set aside the AI for a second, we all have different ideas. Let's say a subsection of this room comes together and decides to create an AI system and decides to collect data on that. Not only are we, again, bringing our own biases and stereotypes and values into those decisions, but also when we decide to collect data on, for example, to make it representative for Middle East, the data does not exist as much as it exists for Western, and by Western I mean more European and US and Canada kind of focused English as well as English-speaking world. So you are already, in a lot of the cases, limited by available data on which we build AI systems. So the data itself, as we mentioned, directly impacts the outcome. So whatever is in that data, because let's be real, a lot of companies, a lot of organizations repurpose data that is available on the internet or available for purchase, data sets. Not many organizations have the resources or the possibility to collect data for the exact question that they want to solve, for the exact context, for they want to deploy the system in the exact geography that they want to use the system. So a lot of the times you're developing these AI systems in California, for example, and then deploy it in Middle East with no idea.
Yeah. And in fact, speaking about data and languages on the internet and in technology in general, Arabic actually accounts for less than 3% of all the content on the internet. So you can imagine how is the lack of content in Arabic is contributing to how AI fails people in the Middle East, because it has not been trained on enough data to be more inclusive for people in the Middle East. And in fact, for some women in the Middle East, it can be the bias against them can be double, because not only are they women, but also they belong to a certain region, a certain culture, a certain religion. Sometimes it's three or four factors gather together and make that AI impact on that woman in the Middle East even more amplified. For instance, we all know how AI and AI powered facial recognition fails Black women, but it fails to recognize their faces, and you can imagine that, for instance, a Black woman from Jordan who wears hijab, it is even more and more marginalized, because now it's less and less represented in the data that this AI system has been trained on. So yes, in the Middle East, in some scenarios, AI negative impact on people in the Middle East in general, and on marginalized groups specifically, tend to be more harmful and has more dangerous consequences on them. And in fact, I have, as I was preparing for that workshop, it crossed my mind to ask Midjourney to imagine a woman terrorist, and all the women that it imagined were wearing the Islamic hijab. Yeah.
So in other words, how AI understands the world really is based on the data it's trained on. And so basically it understands the world that's reflected in the data that we feed the AI system. So the biases that we just heard were mostly about biases against women, but obviously women is not the only group that's biased against by AI system. It's really, as one of our audience members mentioned, in Detroit schools, right? Boys would be, would have been disadvantaged in an AI system that was trained on data that were biased against boys to start with. So one solution is to really keep in mind for the AI users and developers, right, to know that the world that the AI represents is not necessarily the perfect and or the just world. It's a world that has all the flaws that our current society has. I want to see if the two of you want to comment provide more comments on fighting against AI bias before we move on to cyber-based violence.
I would say, like, in addition to bias that we talked extensively, there's also the elements of disinformation or using AI for, I know we're going to come back more to the cyber-based violence, but also gender inequality in terms of what you mentioned as the stereotypes as well. And it's not always, when a woman versus a man applies to a job or considered for pay increases or even like starting salary or application for credit or loan or mortgage or different health decisions, but also what not only the outcomes but also the representation within those systems as well. And more and more in the US, we're also seeing AI being used in contexts where it has direct impact on women's rights. So special context for US would be Roe versus Wade and abortion rights, right? So how AI systems as well as surveillance systems are being used to surveil, to understand what women are doing in different states, what they're accessing, where they're going, what their political views are, and then using that information for physical offline physical repression as well. So there's that element of using AI and AI capabilities, surveillance capabilities for offline impact as well.
Yeah, and this has also this intersects with many privacy concerns. Privacy is a right to every individual, but somehow some people claim that they do AI systems that can know who you are based on your mouse, the way you move your mouse cursor. So I think this is dangerous when it comes to individuals' privacy. And I want to highlight also another problem that women in the Middle East face because of that are amplified by such technologies. For instance, when it comes to AI-powered period trackers, women tend to have a lot of issues when it comes to their privacy and their right to abortion, especially that abortion in most Middle Eastern countries, if not all of them, is criminalized. So this raises more privacy concerns that who has these women's data, with whom is that data being shared, and how long is it being saved on their servers, for instance. So this is also a major issue that faces women.
So we already touched on a little bit about cyber-based violence against women, silencing activists, predatory behavior, and so forth. So Marina, in your research, how do you think AI is, if AI or how it is aggravating the situation?
Well, it is very it's a very big issue and a very big topic that has not been investigated enough until recently. Some researchers around the world are starting to explore this impact on that AI might have on cyber gender-based violence. For instance, some researchers in the Middle East are trying now to understand how do the algorithms of social media platforms work, and how do they contribute to the fact that hate speech against women and campaigns of incitement of violence go viral like very quickly in a matter of minutes, sometimes in less than 15 minutes it just goes viral. So that is one aspect of it. How are AI algorithms contributing to the spread of those campaigns against women activists? Another concern that has recently started to become quite common in the Middle East and also in other countries in the world is how likely will AI be used as a weapon against women activists? How likely will deepfakes be used against them? Deepfakes is when AI systems try to create synthetic images, videos, audios of someone, and this is a major concern of the potential use of such technologies against feminist activists in the Middle East. Yeah.
Merve, would you like to comment?
Yeah, and maybe add to those, whether it's in the U.S. or in the more wider context, is one is representation. Are women allowed to represent themselves and their identities freely on social media or on the internet, or is that content being suppressed as well? One of my good journalist friends did a great piece on Guardian about that kind of suppression, where social media platforms used AI models to kind of detect some of the violent or pornographic images using AI, and then to suppress and censor those before anyone can see it. So in addition to human content moderators, they also use AI systems to detect and suppress that content. But this investigative journalism found that these moderation systems suppress female images, like female body images, more than it does male images, and immediately connected to pornographic content. So suppressing, for example, pregnant women who post their pictures of perfectly dressed, and but shows that it might be sexual images, or women in sports gear, showing off their fitness pictures or wellness pictures, etc. So there's already on one hand, there's suppression of that content, of how women get to show their identity, their interest. but also hypersexualization of the content as well. We now have seen, this was an issue with AI, but also with generative AI systems. Again, that stereotyping of woman into sexualized images and content. We have seen images or experiments, just as you did with generative AI systems, uploading a headshot or uploading a business attire, and then create an image of me, create a generative AI image of me in this context, and immediately the result is woman with original picture doesn't have anything to do with, but the resulting generated image is woman with large breasts or very sexualized, hypersexualized content, which has nothing to do with what the prompt was to the system. So there's an immediate hypersexualization of that stuff as well.
So I actually tried one of those portrait modification or generation website, and the result was obvious. Very obviously, the AI touched picture. In the AI touched picture, I look more like a white person than an Asian person. So, I want to actually turn to some positive sides of AI. Merve, you just mentioned generative AI. This is something that really has caught everybody's attention so far in 2023. So I want to ask you, Merve, to start talking about, do you see AI and generative AI help narrow inequality, gender inequality in some way? And also, AI certainly brings a lot of the benefits to society. That's why, with all the flaws, we're still really interested in developing and advancing AI technology. So how do you see women benefiting from the AI technology and generative AI technology?
I definitely see benefits, but to be able to get to those benefits and, like I said, benefit from AI systems, whether it's traditional AI systems or generative AI systems, equally and equitably, we need to be more intentional about it. We need to have more research and more intentionality going into these products or AI research and development that represents the interests, that represents the identities of different groups. This is not only about women, right? It's LGBTQ communities are experiencing the exact same thing. The religious minorities are experiencing the same thing. People of color are experiencing. So whenever you have an imbalance between whichever context it is that we're talking about, whenever you have a majority-minority imbalance, AI will immediately amplify the majority data, majority values and decisions within that. So how do we benefit from it all? I think opening up that space of decision-making data to represent different identities, different cultures, different languages, and instead of trying to hit the product market or commercial market immediately, being more intentional, deliberate about putting resources into making sure that this is representative of most.
Marina, do you have anything to add?
What Merve said was more than enough. But if I want to add anything, it is to include more people in the making of and programming of such models. This scenario of gender bias in AI reminds me of something that I have read in one of the books of a cultural anthropologist called Emily Martin. Now, she studied the natural sciences at some part of the 18th or 19th century, and what she has found and she has showed in her work is that due to the lack of women in natural sciences back then, scientific illustrations used to draw women as they would draw women having larger hips and smaller brains, and draw men having larger brains. And she showed how it was contributing to the fact that we for a long time have thought about women as caregivers and as men as breadwinners and thinkers. Now the same apply, I think, to this scenario of the bias in technology. If we want these systems to be fair and not have bias against women, then women should contribute to program such tools. If we want these technologies not to have bias against black people, then black people should contribute to that. If we do not want this AI model to have bias against Arabs, then they should contribute to the tech industry itself in making those systems. So that's it.
So actually, this is a great way to lead to my last question, but I really want to be sure that audience members get to ask questions as well. So I'm going to hold off my last question, but I want to see if anybody has any question to discuss. In that case, I am going to ask my last question, which is exactly this. So AI really is shaping the future in many ways. Also the future of work. Humans will lose some jobs to AI. There will be new jobs for humans, and some of them we might not be able to imagine now, right? So, and then you just mentioned participation, right? And so I want to ask, are women getting enough opportunities to join this workforce of the future, in which AI is going to be an essential part? What are some of the challenges in both the Middle East and in the US for women to be able to participate as AI developers and as build new skills to work well with AI?
I'll tackle that first, because that is dear to what we do at Women in AI Ethics and the whole reason the organization started in the first place. So a lot of the times when you look at these conversations of like woman is not at the table, we can't find enough women to talk on panels or events and keynotes or come into the project teams, the immediate knee-jerk reaction from the companies and from the industry is there's not enough women in the pipeline, there are not enough women in the STEM degrees, etc. So we looked at this, and that is not the case, especially in the US. Women are actually increasingly going into STEM rates, and in terms of graduation rates, coming up at the way that you define STEM, coming up at higher degrees in graduation than male students. However, so that's a very easy excuse to get out of the fact that you don't have enough women in your project teams, in your development teams, right? There's not enough women to hire in the first place. What is not being discussed in many of the industry conversations is how do you select women? What are some of the obstacles that are in during the hiring process? Where do women start in terms of their salaries? Is it equal salaries with their male counterparts, or are you making determinations based on gender? We've seen a Nobel winner, prize winner, economist winner, that is exactly showing the differences, exact same qualities, qualifications, education. As soon as they come into the workforce, there's a huge gender pay gap. Who do you promote within the organization? Who gets the development and training opportunities within the organization? who gets to lead these product teams, product management and development teams, and be decision makers. And what kind of an environment, work culture is there? Like, is it toxic? So you might be getting 100 women in, 9 to 5 leave because of the toxic work culture and unavailability of opportunities within the organization, or harassment, or suppression, or different gender gaps, however you define the gender gaps. So it's not necessarily the pipeline issue, but what happens within the organization as you come into the organization, what happens within the organization, and again, what kind of decisions that are reflected in these products by that way as well.
When it comes to the Middle East, actually, especially in Jordan, there are sometimes between 70 and 80% of the total number of students who study STEM fields and computer science are women. But the paradox is when we start looking at the number of women in the workforce in these fields. For instance, women in the ICT sector account for less than 30 to 31% in Jordan. Meanwhile, at the university, they are the vast majority. They are 75 to 80%. But then all the research and all the studies in Jordan tend to usually focus more on numbers than doing qualitative research to understand why these women decide to pull out of the ICT sectors. They decide not to work, and I think we still do in the Middle East. We still do need to study this phenomenon more and to try to understand the reasons behind women pulling out of the tech industry due to maybe glass ceiling, maybe pay gap, maybe mansplaining, maybe that the fact that women are a minority when it comes to the workforce. And so when a new woman joins a team of men programmers, she starts developing this imposter syndrome, a sense of not belonging to that place, and that she was not meant to be a programmer. So I think that whether in the US or in the Middle East or in other parts of the world, we need to encourage women to be active contributors to the tech industry.
I just want to say that I've lived through this in investment banking and trading industry. Before tech was the sexy industry for almost 2 decades. I've gone through the exact same questions, answers, discussions, debates of why women is not why there are not enough women as investment bankers and traders. We've been through this before. We established the business case because that's how things change in corporations. You establish the business case for how women employees, decision makers actually impact the bottom line positively, how diversity impacts the organization's financial results as well as customer results positively. So I feel like living a bit of a deja vu with technology conversations as well. But I am hopeful that with activism, advocacy, as well as some of obligations put on these companies, that we will come to a better future.
Okay, with that, I think we officially end this conversation.